3 o'clock, so we will call the Finance Committee of the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water Sewer Commission for Wednesday, April 19th to order. Do we have any public comments?
No, sir.
Thank you. All right, with no public comments, we'll move into the approval section. We have our minutes from a March 15th committee meeting. There is item number 1. Anybody would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Raise your right hand. All right, motion passes 3-0. Mr. McGinty, property and liability insurance renewal.
But while Mr. McGinney's getting prepared there, our insurance typically expires around the middle of March. This year, because market conditions and the historical trend for the increase in premiums were anticipated, we actually requested a 30-day extension on those policies, which they were able to grant. And Mr. McGinty's been working over the last 30 days to try to get us the best rate he could in a challenging marketplace right now.
You got that right.
Very much so. Yes, the liability package, we actually renewed it March 15th, which was the normal renewal date. And that policy is with the Travelers Insurance Company, where it's been the last couple of years. They still have the most competitive option for us. It's a complete liability package that includes general liability, automobile liability, physical damage, public officials liability, and an excess liability of $1 million. And the premium on that package at renewal was $137,935, which is up 29% from last year. Mostly in the automobile insurance is where most of that increase is, and that's a function of adverse loss experience on automobile in Georgia in general for insurance companies. It's been a very challenging marketplace the last couple of years, primarily due to increased driving and increased accidents and what the insurance companies call social inflation, where juries are given bigger awards for claims nowadays. The crime insurance is basically the same premium. It was up $170. It's with Hanover. It's $1 million, and that's employee dishonesty coverage. Cyber liability was up about, actually it was down slightly from last year, and it's a $1 million policy. It continues with BCS Insurance Company, and then the equipment floater, which is Travelers, and what that covers is the mobile equipment, motor grade, or y'all don't have any motor graders, but backhoes and equipment like that is mobile. That policy continues with Travelers, and the premium was up about $800 from last year. Property insurance is where the big increase was, and as per our previous meeting with the finance company, or with the finance committee, the property insurance market for coastal property, I've been in the business 45 plus years. I have never seen a market as difficult as this market is anywhere close. We're seeing 25 to 100% increases on larger coastal property accounts on St. Simons and Glynn County, with companies that last year would quote a $20, $30 million condominium. This year they might only quote $1 million or $2.5 million on that same account, and they'd want more premium for that low limit than they got for the full limit last year. It's unparalleled in my experience that the marketplace collapsed as rapidly as it did around the end of the year.
Mr. McGinney, on the side, would you have anything else?
No, sir.
On the cyber liability insurance, is that the same scope, or did they include a lot of exclusions? It just seems like with all the stuff going on there.
Same scope, yes, sir.
Well, to that point, one thing we've done, and Commissioner Cook can probably explain this considerably better than I can, we have made some changes to our authentication process and the way we have backups and everything like that with our servers that were driven by expected insurance changes. to help alleviate some of those
In
increases.
fact, y'all went to a multi-factor
We do multi-factor
authentication, which was
authentication,
a
everything
mandatory
like that now.
requirement. All the cyber liability companies are requiring that multi-factor authentication for remote access to the system.
So the savings and really just to staying flat there is because of better
Yes.
systems on our end.
Right.
Yes, sir.
What on the property insurance? I know we had some discussions about looking, at some of those concrete and in the ground assets and lowering insurance values there. Where did we ever land with all of that? I thought that was one of the reasons we got an extension is so we could.
We did. I put together changes to the schedules and presented that to them, and this is based off of those updated schedules.
I think what we did is we raised some values on some properties and maybe eliminated some
We
properties.
took some off, added some that weren't on the list, changed some values, and this is with the new value
The
schedule.
total value was up about 4%, I think,
Yeah.
net, was what the change was.
So how do we drill down this? I mean, I realize we're on the clock here for this year, but well in advance of next year to make sure that we've got those. I mean, is that the right approach, you think, or is it?
Well,
I just remember looking at some of those values and thinking, wow, these are in the ground assets that nothing really can happen to.
I can certainly send you what I updated and sent to Mr. Ginty. You can take a look at them. Obviously, with the lift stations and the number of lift stations we have, we kind of had to take somewhat of a, put them in 3 classifications and do it that way type approach instead of giving an individual value for each lift station, just because of the effort that would involve in a short time window. And then the wastewater plants, we did basically just cut it back to the above-ground equipment rather than, a little bit for the concrete in case of something happening, but not a lot on the concrete-related. The major increases in the property values, we actually decreased the values at the wastewater plants and increased it at the lift stations, just because the values at the lift stations were not gonna be sufficient to replace electrical equipment, which is where we would expect to have losses in the event of something happening. I mean, for example, some of the values we had were in the $50,000 range. You're not redoing the electrical at a pump station for $50,000.
I think 2017 is the last time
Yeah,
we looked
so-
at those values.
I just wonder, I mean, due to the cost of this and the
Right.
elevated cost of it over time, and it's probably that trend might continue,
That-
it seems like it'd be worth making a financial and human resource investment into this to make sure that we get those values as, as close to what, I mean, not necessarily replacement value, because some of the things are just not,
Right.
I mean, you don't need to replace them, they're
Right.
in the ground assets.
Reasonably indestructible.
Reasonably indestructible, there you go. And at that point, if we take a total loss in the system, I mean, we've got.
Exactly. And the problem is, in spite of our best efforts to convince the underwriters how strong your property is, most of it, a lot of it, it gets lumped into one big, it doesn't get adequate credit, and particularly in a marketplace like we're in right now. So I'm certainly available to meet with staff at any time to try to review these values and try to make some educated decisions about what to continue to include on the schedule and what not to include.
Sure.
So I hate to belabor the point, but since it's a $190,000 ad that's
Right.
annually, I mean, from here on out, I just wonder if we shouldn't spend some resources to do just that. But also, maybe if the issue is lumping stuff in, should we try to separate it out and have different insurance companies go after different packages? I mean, maybe we, don't include the in-the-ground assets on the same thing that we're insuring buildings with.
That's a possibility. It'd be more it'd be easier to do it by location, like to do the waste treatment plants and then the other facilities on possibly separate policies with separate insurers. Might be a good approach.
I didn't mean to take the whole thing. Anybody else got any discussion or questions?
I will say, the budget which is being presented next has been adjusted to include these charges.
You ready for the motion?
Yes, sir.
I'll move the Finance Committee recommend the full commission approve insurance renewal rates for each coverage category and insurer as listed in the attached memo provided by staff.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor? Motion carries 3-0.
One question for the committee before Mr. McGinty leaves. Would you like him to be here tomorrow to present this, or you want staff to present it?
I mean,
I'm okay
I'm okay with staff presenting.
Yeah,
it.
I'm-
I just want to make sure
Yeah.
before he left so we could get him an
Yeah,
answer.
yeah, I mean, I think we've We got, several people.
Thank you. We
Thank you,
appreciate your
Mr.
efforts.
McGinney. Appreciate all the hard work you put into this.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Burrows, fiscal year 2024 budget.
Now we can sit back and- That's why he's got two sticks going.
Well, last meeting, we had a few less items. I need 2 cups today. All right. If you recall, at the March Finance Committee meeting, we brought this for your well, it's not showing up on the screen here, hang on. Showing up here. Duplicate, there we go. Presented this to you, we got feedback from the finance committees, we appreciate the feedback you provided, and we've made some adjustments as a result of that feedback. Also, we made some adjustments based off of cost changes that have occurred that we've been made aware of, such as the insurance proposal we just reviewed, and the generators, which we'll talk about later. We talked about in the facilities committee, and of course, personnel costs are adjusted based off of the hiring or resigning of employees throughout the year. So there's been minor adjustments to the personnel cost as a result of that. But the goals for the budget, and we can get into much detail on the line items as you would like. The goals for the budget are 3 that we try to maintain every year, which is first to maintain affordability despite, as Mr. McGinty was mentioning, rapidly increasing cost. We updated the master plan a couple of years ago. We want to make sure we can stay consistent with that master plan, so we always want to increase our project funding. And then we want to improve our equipment reliability, both process equipment and mobile equipment that the field staff uses. So a few highlights. If you recall at the last budget presentation, we were requesting a sewer rate adjustment and an admin fee adjustment. The admin fee adjustment has been taken out. The request is for a sewer rate adjustment. We are increasing the funding provided to our R&R projects. We talked about increasing that project funding to maintain the master plan, and then we have severely, compared to what we've done in previous years, reduced the amount of capital equipment replacement.
What page is that in? We're trying to follow along.
You don't have this presentation in your packet.
Oh, okay, sorry.
My apologies. All right, so our fiscal 2024 budget request total is $35.97 million. That's a 4.6% increase compared to the current year's budget of 34.4. We are not requesting a 4.6% increase in the rates. So a couple of things that we've done. We have seen consistent growth in our community. And we've also, from the last month where I presented this, the 2 lowest revenue months of our year are February and March. And so getting the March numbers in, which came in stronger than they had been in previous years, we felt more comfortable projecting forward slightly higher revenues in line items for next year because we didn't see the reduction in the March revenues like we typically see. Revenues, 42% from sewer, 21% from water, 13% from REU fees, 18% from admin, and then small amounts from interest income and other revenue sources. So again, talked about increasing customer count. That increases the admin fees and the REU fees that we're paying. The proposed rate adjustment for sewer usage, which I will say, if you approve the budget today, you are not necessarily approving the new rates. You will do that at a rate resolution in June. However, I will give you fair warning that if you approve this today, I'm going to have the same rate adjustment on the June presentation. It's 1.3% on average for our residential bills on the sewer use. It's 25 cents per 1,000 gallons. And our rental space next door at the CVS has been removed because the county is going through the process of finalizing the purchase of that, so we did not want to project that rental income moving forward. So I talked about customer growth. These numbers are a little small on the bottom there. But in the last 5 years, we went from sewer customers of just shy of 23,000 to an average right now of 24,600. And that growth is increasing. Water customers, 27,000 in 2019, over 29,000 now. So 2,000 additional customers in each of those over the last 5 years has increased both usage and the base fees that are being paid. Again, the proposed rate is 25 cents per 1,000 gallons, increase in the sewer usage rate. The average residential customer, which uses 4,200 gallons in our system, the first 1,000 gallons, which is included in the base rate, would increase 80 cents per month. And here's some examples. Like I said, the first 1,000 is included in the base rate, so if you use 1,000 gallons or less, your rate would not change, your bill would not change. And it goes up 25 cents per 1,000 gallons after that. So if you're using 7,000 gallons, your bill goes up $1.50 a month. If you're a small restaurant, $9.75. If you're an apartment complex, $81 per month. If you're a large industrial customer that's using, say, 1 million gallons in a month, it's going up, $2,500 a month or something like that. Showed this chart last time. This has been adjusted for this new proposed rate. That other numbers have not been adjusted, but the average for similar location and somewhat similar size utilities around us, some of them are larger, some of them are smaller, for 4,200 gallons a month is $62.86. The Joint Water and Sewer Commission would be $61.83, slightly below average. I'm not saying that we're providing services as cheaply as some other in our area. However, we are well in line with what the average of our area is providing services. Revenues per year, the green bar is sewer revenues. We'll say the dip in 2021 for sewer revenues that you see if you follow that bar along is due to some very large leak adjustments that we gave that month, and leak adjustments come off of sewer revenues. Water has consistently increased. We're seeing a lot more irrigation usage on our system. The cost to install irrigation wells has went up in recent years, and so we have become an attractive option for people to put in irrigation meters. And then the increase in customers driving up the increase in the RAU and admin fees that we've seen. On the expense line items, we basically break it down to a third of it goes to operating, a third of it goes to personnel, and then a third of it either goes to projects or debt service. So that kind of breaks it down a little bit for you there. Debt service makes up about 8%, project makes up about 23%. Same staff count as last year. We have filled vacancies from last year, which is leading to an increase in the cost that was budgeted because we do not budget full years for vacant positions. We have included a 2.5% wage increase budget for employees that, based off discussion with the commission, we will bring back to you, if approved, at the May or June meeting, how we plan to administer those raises to our staff. By division, we spend approximately half of our funds on wastewater treatment and systems pumping and maintenance. Both of those have very similar budget totals. Sewer in our area, due to the flatness, is extremely expensive to pump, and then wastewater treatment operating 3 facilities. Water production and water distribution make up about 15% of the budget, so you're looking at 65% of the budget being the 4 main field groups. The general water and sewer expenses has increased to 2% of the budget. That is where the insurance is charged to. So if you see that increase, that's where that goes. Office of the Director and the governing body make up about 4%. Admin, which is customer service, IT, and meter reading, meter services, is 7.5%. Finance makes up 13%, which includes the full value of the group insurance for employee health insurance. All is charged to finance there. Purchasing makes up 4%, and planning and construction or engineering is about 6.5%. So major increases in the budget this year. We talked about increasing the R&R transfer. With this proposed budget, we will increase the transfer to the R&R by $644,764. I will not say that's going to do a whole nother project, but it will help. Chemicals went up $366,000 on the budget. Oxygen and chlorine are up substantially in the past year. We're working to get our oxygen costs down. The chlorine cost, we don't have a rate problem with the dosage of chlorine into our system. It's just that it's costing about 50% more than what it did last year. In electricity, we talked about this last time. We did confirm the rate increase with Georgia Power. It is going up 20% because none of our locations use enough power to get on the industrial rates. So 20% across the board for power usage. Vehicles, I talked about we decreased, these are decreases, talked about taking them out. Last year we bought a substantial amount of equipment to replace things. We have really scaled that back. We're buying $600,000 less vehicles and equipment. Banking fees, we're switching to Synovus, which is an ongoing process, but we're projecting a reduction of just shy of $150,000 in banking fees. I will say on the banking switch to Synovus, we talked about the last meeting with the investment proposal that they are offering for the first 12 months, a little over 4% on our balances. That has been included in the interest income projections that you will see, which is another reason why the budget increased since the last time we talked. Some highlights on the capital request. The full list is in your book there, but the capital request, we talked about the lead detection units. Those are to assist with our lead service line inventory. Trimble GPS units to buy 4 of those to replace our now outdated and unsupported equipment through GIS. And then a Harbin Jetter replacement. We use the VACCons do 6-inch and larger lines. The Harbin Jetter does services for 6 and 4-inch lines, depending on customer property. They didn't build up as much pressure, so there's less chance of blowing into somebody's house on a service line. And with that, we can go through with as much detail as anybody'd like. Per the request, I went through and grayed out every other line to make it easier to read, and I also added more years worth of previous year actuals and updated the projected based off the March numbers that came in as well. So with that, I will open it up to any questions that you may have.
Guess the lack of questions. Sorry, I turned my mic off. Guess the lack of questions is a good thing. Nice presentation.
Well, I appreciate that. Some of the staff members want to know what I've been doing for the last 3 weeks, and I said I've been changing the budget 8 times. And they said, well, how long does it take to change the budget? Well, you change one number, it impacts every other number on the sheet.
The only thing I'd like to add is, and I don't know if this is necessarily a budget discussion much as it is a policy discussion, but I still believe some of these large capital items that we approve as a general budget item today
We can bring those back to you.
should come back to us. So I don't know if we need a policy that says, I mean, the way I'm used to seeing it is organizations have policies that say if something is a line item in the budget, if it's a line item in the budget and below a certain threshold, it does not have to come back. If it's not a line item in the budget and a request, there's a different threshold. And then at some point, there's a threshold no matter what.
Right.
So you might want to say, if it's a line item in the budget and more than 20,000, or less than 20,000, and it's a line item budget, you got to bring it here. If it's not a line item in the budget, then anything over 10 has to come here, or whatever. I don't know if I described that.
Currently, our practice is anything over 25,000 comes to you, even except for the only thing we don't bring in over 25,000 are the identified equipment items, as long as they come in under the budget provided. If they came in over the budget, we would bring those to you, but luckily we haven't had that problem. But we can certainly bring each of those in for your review.
I think we need to change policy to be that personally, and the reason is I think that makes it flow much easier at budget time,
Sure.
and where we're not talking about individual line items and trying to decide in March if we want to replace cameras in
Right.
January
Right.
of the following year. I mean, so we're not having a discussion today about whether $70,000 is a good deal for cameras. We're just saying, yeah, we approve this as a general ask, and then before we actually go
Sure.
to bid with that, we have another conversation about it.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if that's a policy we need to change, or just
Just a practice we can put in place.
a commitment from yourself that
We'll do that.
that'll be the process.
Now, I will say,
Does everybody disagree? Agree?
I agree with that.
And I honestly, I'd like to, policy-fy might not be might not be a word, but I'd like to, have that be a, actual
yes, sir.
That's a standard operating
standard
procedure.
operating procedure. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
not just a verbal, because people change and.
I will certainly say in here, one thing to consider with this budget, our largest customer is Pinova, and the revenue could be impacted depending on how long it takes them to get back to full production. Just keep that in mind moving forward. They are by far and away our largest customer. So,
Which only highlights the point that, we don't
Yeah.
want to vote on something in March and then not have an opportunity to look at it again throughout the course of the year, because things do change.
right.
So before we, say we're gonna spend X amount of dollars on a capital thing, I believe we should bring it back here. So
Yes, sir.
can you draft a policy or?
We'll have it for you at the May meeting. That's the next meeting.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
sure.
so we'll have it for you next meeting. Yes, sir.
All right, do we have a motion?
We're gonna vote on 2 motions here, or there's?
That was
is it-
2, yes.
No, sir, it's one motion, and remember, for Commissioner Watson, for your sake, since you haven't been on our board, we are required per the operating agreement that established our organization to provide a copy of our budget for comment to the city and the county. In the history of this organization, there's never been a comment provided by the city or the county, but we're required to release that to them. So the motion is, one motion is to approve submission of that budget to the city and the county, and then, subject to revisions based off those, it would approve the budget for next year, and then we would bring the rate resolution to you in June. We would also have town hall meetings, I believe it's the second week of June, I'll get you those dates specifically, where one on St. Simons, one on the mainland, where we present the budget, rates, and anything like that to the citizens that may have questions.
Perfect. I'll make a motion.
Please.
I move that the Finance Committee recommend the full commission take the following actions. Number one, approve submission of the proposed fiscal year 2024 JWSC budget to the City of Brunswick and to Glynn County for their review and comment. Number two, approve the fiscal year 2024 JWSC budget in the amount of $35,970,000, subject to revisions resulting from comments received from the City of Brunswick and/or Glynn County.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Item number 4, Mr. Burrows, and I'll add that this came before the Facilities Committee about 2 hours ago.
That's correct. So we bring this to the Facilities Committee to somewhat outline the scope of the projects. Of course, the Finance Committee is here to discuss the funding sources and the total budget we're talking about. So the fiscal year 2024 capital projects plan, we bring this to you concurrent with the budget. Project plan for next year for funding sources that are JWSC funded are $16.75 million. I say JWSC funded because there are additional work that be completed at the bond issuance that we have that we had the proceeds in 2021, and also the SPLOST 2021 that just kicked off a couple weeks ago. So the funding sources you see there, we're proposing funding projects out of 3 sources: the repair and replacement reserve, $6.9 million, which is a projected uncommitted balance beginning July 1st of $1.9 million if the 6.95 is approved. And that $1.9 million is higher than we typically would run a uncommitted budget to start the year. But with the overruns we're seeing in some of our projects, I wanted to give sufficient cushion. SIFs is capital improvement fees. Those are fees collected from new connections to our systems that can only be used for expansion-related projects. $6.3 million worth of those projects are included in this plan, leaving an uncommitted balance, projected uncommitted balance on July 1st of $980,000. And then the capital we fund each year in the budget, $300,000 in the capital, and to a capital reserve that has never been used. But we have a large project that we need to get done. And so I'm proposing funding that out of that capital plan, which is included, that capital funding of $300,000 is included in the budget that we just presented. That'll leave an uncommitted balance of July 1st of $428,000. So the total plan, $16.75 million, leaving a projected uncommitted balance July 1st of $3.3 million. The projects we're speaking about, and I'll be happy to go through in detail with anybody that has questions. I can pull up GIS. Dunbar clarifier improvements. It's a $3.75 million project to install a 3rd clarifier at the Dunbar Creek Water Pollution Control Facility. Clarifiers separate solids from the water after biological treatment. There are currently 2 on site. We want to add a 3rd one for a couple of reasons. One is very difficult for us to do maintenance on just 2 clarifiers, because with 1 clarifier at higher flows, we get a little bit nervous. And then also the 3rd clarifier allows us to expand the capacity of the Dunbar Creek facility from 4 to 5 million gallons per day when needed. This will also require us to reroute the entrance load slightly to allow for the full width clarifier to get in there, so that includes the money to do that. Pump station 2001 and 2002 are pump stations on the south end of St. Simons Island, which the master plan identified as needing complete electrical replacements. And there's also additional work at pump station 2002 for recoating the wet well for corrosion issues and installing new discharge piping and valves. That's a $1.35 million project. Harrington Airport and Mallory Water Production Facility are well sites on St. Simons Island that the master plan identified needing complete electrical replacement due to the electrical system reaching the end of their useful life. And then also ceiling repair at the Harrington facility and a new finished water meter at that facility. And then at the airport and Mallory tanks, we have old underground storage tanks. That's what UST is, that have the ability to store diesel fuel. We have ordered generators through a FEMA grant program that are on order and should be here within the next 6 to 8 months, that have belly tanks on the generator, so we don't need the underground storage tank, and that underground storage tank comes with additional permitting and testing requirements. Pump station 3103 is on the south end in the Royal Oaks subdivision. All the flow from the Georgia Ports Authority goes through that facility, as well as some of the commercial in that area. There's increased commercial development as well as an expansion to the port facilities that is planned and underway. So the request is to fund a $3.5 million project out of that capital fund to increase the pumping capacity at that station and reroute the piping and/or increase the discharge piping in the existing force main under I-95. And then pump station 4119 is at the intersection of Highway 99 and Golden Isles Parkway. It handles all of the flow along Highway 99. Right now, if you go out Highway 99 and up Golden Isles Parkway across Highway 99, you will see a considerable amount of new development going on. We need to increase the flow from that station to handle the new developments that are proposed and underway. So this will be to increase the flow rate at the station and also install approximately 18,000 linear feet of force main along Highway 99, bore underneath I-95, and tie into the downstream pump station. What this does, it increases the capacity, and then upon construction of the new wastewater treatment plant at exit 42, the pipe can be turned around and the flow from 4118 can go through that pipe, so you get dual use out of it. Total budget, again, $16,750,000, split up $6.9 million amongst R&R, $6.3 million from capital improvement fees, and $3.5 million from the capital budget. This does not include the $13 million SPLOST projects or the remaining $6 million worth of bond projects. So we have a lot of work going on. We want to continue making progress on our systems. Any questions on the specifics of the projects?
Ready to have a motion?
Yep. I'll move the Finance Committee recommend the full commission approve the fiscal year 2024 capital projects plan as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Motion passes 3 to nothing. Mr. Burrows, Dunbar Creek Water Pollution Control Facility, change order number 2.
Yes, sir. On February 12th, we had an influent line collapse at the Dunbar Creek facility. We had a smaller section collapse towards the end of last year. With the second section collapsing a 30-inch influent sewer, we made the recommendation to the on-site contractor doing the design build upgrades there to replace the entire line, which he did, and has provided us open book pricing per the design build agreement. We have line item totals on the invoice that you'll see that are supported by supporting invoices for every one of those line item totals, plus previously agreed upon markup and overhead fees. The total cost for the replacement of the line, which has been completed, is $340,049.48. The Dunbar Creek rehab project is funded from the Series 2021 bond issuance, and the request is to formalize the approval of change order number 2 to add that money to the contract so we can get them paid for that work. $340,049.48, and the breakdown is provided there behind that if you want to know where all of that money went. Per the conversation in the Facilities Committee, we will be looking in the future at the cost of renting bypass pumps across the spectrum of our projects versus potentially buying those and having those available for contractors to utilize.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows. Have a motion?
I move that the Finance Committee recommend that the full commission approve change order number 2 in the amount of $340,049.48 to BRW Construction Group, LLC, for scope changes associated with the Dunbar Creek WPCF rehab project.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions?
I will say, we personally, from prices I've seen recently, this is a pretty good price to get this work done for us.
I think so. We did 180, there was 180 feet of pipe,
Yes, sir.
and what we replaced it with is significantly improved?
It was, we replaced ductile iron pipe, 30-inch ductile iron pipe, which is typically what's used at wastewater facilities, but ductile iron's got about a 48-week lead time on it right now.
Okay.
We were able to secure heavy walled PVC and put it in the ground, so it should be non-reactive to any sewer gases.
So, and that would be.
Minimum 50-year lifespan.
Okay. And this was an emergency. Quite.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Yes.
There was quite a hole out there. It's no longer there, just dirt on top of the ground now.
Okay.
No grass yet. Can't get grass to grow.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Mr. Burrows, number 6, contract award, SPLOST, Exit 29, Water Pollution Facility, and EST Engineering.
Yes, sir. Okay, as we talked about, we have the projects we fund internally, and this is a project that's funded by the SPLOST. SPLOST collections began on April 1st of this month. So we released a proposal at the end of February with the full intention of awarding a contract the first month that the SPLOST collections began. The Exit 29 area has 3 existing wells, 2 of which have production capabilities. That's a Fancy Bluff well and the Old Brookman well. The Fancy Bluff well is right outside Fancy Bluff Park, across from the Royal Oak subdivision near the port. Old Brookman is out at the far end of 82 in our system, across from the Deans Island tract. The existing Exit 29 well that we're talking about here is located adjacent to the wastewater treatment plant at Exit 29. If you think of the Exit 29 system as a T that follows along 17, and then the stem of the T is where 17 goes towards Camden County, this well will help provide increased water availability, and then the construction of an elevated storage tank at the facility will stabilize pressures on the stem of that T. We do have some fluctuations in that area. This is a SPLOST-funded project that began. We will not receive our first in end of May, early June for that. So we're getting out a little bit ahead of this, but that's what we do not want to be behind on these SPLOST projects. So we've scored the proposals. The highest scoring proposal, which was reviewed at the Facilities Committee, was from Thomas & Hutton. They are doing a significant amount of work with us, and they have an existing well facility that they're finalizing right now, which will allow them to standardize the design at this well facility. The cost for the design is $230,480. What we've done on this contract, we typically award construction phase services at the same time. We ask for a percentage budget for construction phase services based off construction cost. That is 3%. And so there will be a construction phase services contract award upon bidding the project out, not to exceed the 3% budget that they provided. So this is just for the design and bidding of the project. Staff recommends moving forward with Thomas & Hutton for $230,480.
I move that the Finance Committee recommend that the full commission award a contract in the amount of $230,480 to Thomas & Hutton for engineering services for the SPLOST Exit 29 Water Production Facility and Elevated Storage Tank Project.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
But again, this is one of these projects that is necessary, but is being bumped up because of the people that voted for SPLOST, and you're going to utilize this money for the benefit of our system and our customers.
Absolutely. And we heard the commentary from our citizens that they wanted the SPLOST projects done quicker. So we're issuing a contract the first month that the SPLOST has been in existence. So
Definitely so.
trying to get out ahead of it.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken, it's the first contract anybody's issued off of SPLOST. So
Mr. Burrs, speak again, if you will, on the second phase of the engineering costs, but the percentage.
yes.
I didn't follow exactly.
So
what
when
you
we
were saying.
bid for inspection and construction administration, which of course is reviewing change orders, invoices, production of record drawings, all of those type things, we requested a percentage budget based off of the bid price of construction. And the reason we did that is in the past we've had lump sum, or not lump sum, but not to exceed budgets for that. And it would be, the budget that people would provide us was dependent on how long they thought the construction project would take. Because if they're budgeting for 180 days of construction, and then when we get the bid, the contractor tells us it's going to be 365 days of construction, then that budget was not sufficient to carry through the life of the project. So we asked for a firm number on percentage of construction cost, which has been provided at 3% by Thompson Hutton, which was in line with the other proposals we received. And then when we get the bids back, we will go to them and request that budget based off of that schedule provided by the contractor at that time, and they will not be able to get more than the 3% that they provided. It potentially will be less than that, depending on what the budgeted price is, the bid price is.
So might not be following you, but my concern when anytime you set a fee as a percentage of something, they're incentivized to drive the cost up.
We will, you are correct.
Not saying they would do that, I'm not saying that
Well,
anybody who's honest would do
it
that.
is
but-
incumbent on staff to make sure we review these things to make
Sure.
sure that we're not getting the Cadillac when a Chevrolet will be fine.
Right, but, I mean, it just, it incentivizes somebody to drive cost up versus if it's a, if it's a fixed fee that's based off a percentage, then they really don't have that incentive to.
Well, I would say the construction phase services is a budget. It's not a lump sum. So if the budget is 3%, they bill hourly, we get guaranteed rates, and they bill hourly through the project on that. So just because they get 3% doesn't mean they're going to spend it either, because it depends on how much time they actually spend doing the work.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? We'll call the vote. All those in favor? All right, motion carries 3-0. Start the agenda here. Mr. Burrows, contract award for Highway 341 and Crispin Boulevard repairs.
Sir, a sinkhole occurred at the intersection of Highway 341 and Crispin Boulevard. It is actually in the right travel lane of the northbound side of Highway 341. We've done some video inspection to determine there's a partially collapsed line, 18-inch ductile iron pipe in the area, a 60-foot section. And I can pull up the map and show you. We went over this in the Facilities Committee. This is a highly challenging project to get completed. There are 2 force mains that come into the manhole upstream of this. You're at a very busy intersection for traffic-related purposes, and there's also 2 36-inch RCP lines that cross above the top of the reinforced concrete pipelines that cross above the top of the sewer line that if we dug down and tried to replace this would have to be supported. What we've done is went out for multiple quotes. We contacted 7 firms. 5 of them, upon looking at the site, declined to provide a proposal. 2 of them did provide a response, and it's essentially the same proposal from 2 different firms. It's just who's the prime contractor. The proposals were from Popco Inc. and Bionomic Services. Popco will handle bypassing, well pointing, driveway repairs, paving, and traffic control. Bionomics will handle manhole rehab, CIPP, which is trenchless rehab of the pipe, and soil stabilization. So they'll inject the soil with soil stabilizers to keep it in place. It's a 45-day contract upon mobilization. We've recommended moving forward with Popco because Bionomics, if they were the prime, added a management fee to manage the contract, so we avoid that cost. Now, I will say the cost for this section is substantially higher than what we would see for a typical repair of a 60-foot section. However, given the lack of interest and the need to get this work completed as quickly as possible to restore the roadway to required conditions by GDOT, we do recommend moving forward with Popco. And this would be funded due to the cost of $679,000 funded out of the Series 2021 bond issuance because CIPP rehab is a allowable use of the bond funding under the bond covenants. So, again, we just got 180 feet of 30-inch pipe replaced for $300,000 versus repairing 60 feet of 18-inch pipe. We got a good deal at the wastewater plant.
All right, I'll move that the Finance Committee recommend that the full commission approve a contract award in the amount of $679,000 to Popco Inc. for necessary repairs at the Highway 341 and Crispin Boulevard intersection.
I'll second the motion.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, so we're gonna do a CIPP on this section.
We will inject soil stabilization into the ground. Then they will come in, assuming that they can get the soil to consolidate well and no longer be moving. They will then come in and jet the line and break all of it free. The pipe itself will not be perfectly circular when we get done with it, but we'll stick the sock in there and CIP it from that point on. We've done it before, it's successful. It's a time-consuming process to inject soil stabilization all the way around. But otherwise, when you start digging, we're concerned that those RCP lines are gonna collapse on us as well.
Those are not our lines.
Those are not our lines. Those are Glynn County, well, I believe they're Glynn County lines. I can't speak to the ownership of those lines, but they're part of the Glynn County storm sewer system.
How far is this between pump stations?
A long way. The pump station that pumps into that comes from River Ridge, if you know where that is, up 341, a neighborhood on the left side. and that gravities to a pump station 4036 off of B&W Grade Road.
So this is a gravity line, not a,
Gravity line. There's 2 force mains that come into it,
Yeah, I misread
but it's a
that.
gravity line. Yes, sir.
just curious, I mean, what would it cost to set a manhole on either side of this and bore a new gravity line and abandon this?
We have requested those costs from proposals, and we were told we didn't want to see it.
Really? Because of your point, I mean, it just seemed way out of
It,
whack.
I fully understand it is way out of whack. At this point, it's more about getting the work done.
And what's the risk of delay?
Further collapse of the line, which means you got a significant overflow at that intersection, complete intersection closure. There's a lot of potential concerns there.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion or any further
I
questions?
won't say this is the hardest line in the system to work on, but it's one of them, so.
Any further questions?
No.
All right, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. All right, motion carries 3-0. Number 8, Mr. Burrs, contract award for Academy Creek influent check valve replacement.
Yes, sir. All 4 influent pumps at the Academy Creek facility have an influent check valve and a plug valve to valve them off. Check valve opens when the pump turns on, pushes the flapper out of the way, and the water goes. It prevents water from flowing backwards on you. We've purchased 4 check valves, and we have them on site. So we requested proposals to get these replaced. These are large 16-inch check valves. Will require cranes and equipment that we just simply do not have. We received 2 quotes with a third contractor providing a polite but decline of our, just because of lack of resources to get it done. BRW Construction submitted a quote of $31,423. Macklejohn submitted a quote of $23,950 for 2 instead of 4, so doubling that would be $47,900. Staff recommends replacing all 4 at one time to avoid having to pay multiple mobilization charges, and we do have all 4 valves available. So staff recommends awarding to BRW Construction for $31,423 to replace the 4 check valves. What they'll do is take the check and the plug out, move it all the way out, assemble the new, take the plug off that is staying, put the new check, assemble everything on top of the ground, and then lower it into the hole. And this is funded out of the Academy Creek operations budget.
We already bought the check valves.
We already have the valves, yes, sir.
What was the price,
They're like $5,500 a piece, something like that. It was less than $25,000 for all 4 valves.
I'll move that the Finance Committee recommend that the full commission approve a contract award in the amount of $31,423 to BRW Construction Group LLC for influent check valve replacements at Academy Creek.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Burrs, on the Macklejohn quote, I mean, have we reached out to them though and verified that that wasn't just a typo saying that 2 instead
Yes.
of 4?
Yes, we
And
did.
they really said,
Yeah, they said, they just gave us a quote for 2, because, and they said that we could essentially double it, yes, sir. I mean, it might not be a strict doubling, but you're gonna get over the 31,000.
and the other reason I ask is, it's got in here, it says prices in effect at the time of order and subject to change due to the ever-changing steel market and availability, which makes me think that they are also including the valves, which we already have.
That's correct. They are not including valves. Let me get to it here.
So why that language?
I think that's just a standard language they're putting in all their proposals right now. So they're removing and replacing the valves, boom truck and operator, and they're providing bolts and gaskets similar to what you see here on the other one. Remove the valves, replace with owner furnished valves, and they're providing the bolts, gaskets, and mega flanges.
Yeah, just wanted to verify because, the language,
Right,
remove and replace 2 valves could be interpreted to say that we're including the valves too.
sure.
And
But we
then-
have confirmed, yeah, we did confirm that they knew we were buying the valves.
Okay. That's just odd language to say, ever-changing steel market.
Yeah, like I said, you'll see on some some providers on their invoices, they have standard language on all of them. We don't do a ton of work with Macklejohn, but I suspect they're just including that on all of their quotes right now.
Copy and paste.
Yeah, I suspect they're including that on every quote they're getting right now.
Do we have a motion and a second? Any further discussion?
No.
All right, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries 3-0. Number 9, storm contingency standby generator rental.
Yes, sir. We were hoping not to have to bring this to y'all this year because we have ordered bypass or standby generators from a FEMA grant program that we were supposed to be delivered in July, but we got notified last week they would not be here to November. So with that in mind, we always have rented 5 portable generators to have on site during storm season. These are portable, can be moved to different pump stations where we can pump a station down and then relocate it to another station if necessary. The cost to rent the portable generators from Yancey with their Caterpillar generators for the length of the season from June to November is $138,605.50. This is a funded budgeted line item in the systems pumping and maintenance operating budget for hurricane preparedness. And then we get, as discussed at the facilities committee, we'll look at seeing if we can provide the cables and cam locks instead of having to rent those from them and just rent the 5 generators from them. And also as far as us potentially going and picking them up to save the $7,000 to pick up and take back. But there's $138,605.50, and as I said, we updated the budget several times. This is one of the updates to the budget because we had almost zeroed out that line item previously before we had to add it back in there.
I would challenge that to them, not to you, but I would challenge that 2% environmental fee too. I mean, these generators stand by, they're not running. Why environmental fee? I mean, I get it, they're running for.
Because they can.
Because they can, right? That's what I challenge it.
But as I mentioned at the facilities committee, I will say once we purchase the generators, we have to front the money and then we get reimbursed through FEMA. Assuming we get the full reimbursement back for the 5 generators, we're basically buy 1 get 4 free deal once we get reimbursed. And I think each one's going to come in around $150,000. So essentially, for the cost of renting 5 generators a year, for a one-time fee, we're going to buy 5 of them, which is a really nice feature that FEMA allows us to do.
And how many months are we renting them here?
6 or 5, or, yeah, June, July, August, September, and October, November.
6.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move that the finance committee recommend the full commission approve the rental agreement with Yancey Power Systems CAT in the amount of $138,605.50.
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All right, motion carries 3-0. Mr. Burrs, number 10, USGS joint funding agreement.
Yes, sir. We enter into agreements every year with the U.S. Geological Survey to monitor the groundwater system, the upper Florida and aquifer we pull from our well zone, to monitor the migration of chlorides due to saltwater intrusion into the aquifer. This is a key long-term planning tool we have to monitor the water condition at each of our well sites. And we also monitor the plume. There's a plume that's located close to the existing Georgia Pacific facility, which is relatively close to the Brunswick-Glynn well that we have, and the impacts of the saltwater intrusion have in the past 5 to 6 years caused us to have to shut down the Perry Park well as a drinking water source. It has now been grouted. There's an elevated tank there, but the well is no longer in use. As you can see, the cost has fluctuated considerably over the years. The U.S. Geological Survey does provide some matching funds. It is not 50-50. The cost for the operating the equipment and the labor involved with maintaining and taking the samples has went up. We were able to negotiate down from an original proposal of over $90,000 for the joint water and sewer share this year down to $80,000 for the JWSC share. This is a budgeted item in the Office of the Director's Technical Service budget. I will say, if you were reviewing the budget and you had questions as to why the Office of the Director of Technical Services was, let me get it here. While we were budgeting $100,000 when we're only expected to spend $30,000, that's because this contract hadn't hit it yet, and it's a one-time fee. So the request is to approve that, and we went through some of the details at the Facilities Committee meeting. USGS provides $64,000 of the agreement. We provide $80,000, and then a little bit of details here. This is the shape of the saltwater intrusion plume where we have chloride readings. This is a Georgia Pacific facility. Of course, this is Pinova. They both pull more water in a day than we do, and you can see how that sort of determines the shape of the plume. And of note, you can see how the plume has developed over the years. Kudos to Georgia Pacific, by the way. They have significantly reduced their water withdrawals in the past 40 years, which has probably stabilized this plume more than anything. But you'll see in the early 2000s and up to 2015, you were seeing expansion. The warmer the color, the higher the concentration. Till in 2020, you're starting to see some slight reductions in some of those concentrations, which is good for the water quality. I did mention in the Facilities Committee meeting, USGS reaches out to other large water users in our area to request funding. Historically, there has been limited success at that, and so as us being the main providers of drinking water in the system, we have always funded this project. We continue to ask for assistance from other water users.
I always wondered, and I think we discussed this a long time ago back when Mr. Junkin was here, but if there was an opportunity to, put in kind of some kind of ordinance that, from the local government, that the heavy water users who are causing this, help fund it on behalf of the community, because it does affect the whole community long term. Where this.
I will say, Jekyll Island does have an agreement that they take care of as well to help offset some of the cost. And then I believe last year the Economic Development Authority provided some funding because of course, potential economic development impacts of something like this. So we are getting some more participation in that. We continue to reach out. USGS reaches out as well. It's just limited success, but it's a good program to keep funding here at Joint Water and Sewer for our needs to make sure we're providing safe drinking water to everybody.
I mean, I realize every gallon affects it theoretically.
Right.
But I mean, the only real effect is by Pinova and GP Cellulose, correct?
Major impacts from GP just because they pull 25 to 30 million a day out of the ground. We pull on the mainland 5 to 6 out of the ground. Now, with that being said, consider this plume, if they decided not to pull 30 million out of the ground, it's going to shift heavily all of a sudden. So them continuing to do what they're doing is actually keeping it where it's at.
It's also going to dissipate, though.
Potentially.
I mean, let's presume, maybe I'm just way off base here, but I assume this is sucking salt water out of the ocean down in.
Yeah, they get cracks in the
Yeah.
in the plates and stuff, and the salt water gets through there.
So if you're not using that kind of volume, you're not having that kind of suction, and you're not having that kind of infiltration from the ocean, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So you can see all the well sites that they've got samples at there. And I offered to the Facilities Committee, the Finance Committee is certainly welcome to take us up as well if you're interested. Dr. Cherry here with the USGS would be happy to come down and present all his findings that you have, if you would so like him to do so.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move the Finance Committee recommend the full commission enter into a joint funding agreement with USGS in the amount of $80,000 for the continuation of groundwater monitoring in the Upper Florida Aquifer.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Number 11, Mr. Burrow, surplus inventory and equipment.
Yes, sir. We got 4 trucks from our systems pumping and maintenance division that are being recommended for surplus. We got some high mileage vehicles there, some dated vehicles, 2004, 2006 models, and they have maintenance issues as well, frame and alignment issues, service body issues, electrical issues on one of them as well. So the recommendation here, these have all been replaced in recent years, and we're just trying to clean up some of the old stuff we have on site, is to declare these items as surplus, and we typically put these on the GovDeals website to see if anybody would like to purchase them, and if not, we scrap them. So request is to declare them as surplus, to move them off the fixed assets register so that we can get rid of them.
I'll move that the Finance Committee recommend that the full commission approve the above listed items as surplus to be disposed of in a manner most beneficial to the JWSC.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Can I ask one thing? Is it possible to follow up, like, in a few months and see if these things actually
Sure.
sell or something?
We can give you.
Just curious about
We can certainly give you that. One of the things to, and I'll pull up the financials real quick to show you, one line item where you'll see that in, if they are sold. Now, it's not everything that may be included in that line item, but
Right.
is the gain loss on sale of assets. you'll see, you know, $4,000 show up in there.
Okay.
It's because somebody bought it off of GovDeals.
Okay, all right, I'm just curious
I agree with
whether
Mr.
anything
Cook.
goes.
I think that'd be
We can certainly
helpful.
bring that to you.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, so.
Just jumping out, I mean, it just seems like 137,000 miles on an F-450. I just think of that as a very heavy truck. I mean, it just seems like on a heavy diesel like that, it would have more useful life than that.
This one, if I'm not mistaken, had an accident, was not deemed totaled, but we've got a substantial amount of body work that's got to be done to that.
Yeah, I see that one, the alignment issues in the frame, that certainly makes sense. The one above it, 155, granted that's 18,000 more miles or whatever, but,
It's a 2006, yeah.
but 450 I just think of as, you know,
None of those are highway miles.
No, sir. No. Limited highway miles, yes, sir.
and that's true, but I mean, you know, just think
Local.
of 450 is. All right, any further discussion?
No.
Have a motion second, all those in favor? Motion passes 3-0. Number 12, Mr. Burrows, appointment of the auditor for fiscal year 2023 budget. I'm sorry, Mr. Owens. You got in the habit of saying Mr.
I
Burrows?
understand.
Thank you, Mr. Owens.
You were just on a roll there.
That's
Just
right,
keep
yeah.
going. Good afternoon. Back in 2021, the commission issued an RFP for auditing services, the result of which was the selection of Malden and Jenkins to serve as our auditors for our fiscal year audit of 2021. The contract came with 2 optional years to follow, all 3 years at the same rate of $19,900. I started with the commission last year, just in time to get in on the 2022 audit. And now, as we approach our fiscal year end for 2023, the staff is asking the Finance Committee to recommend to the full commission that we exercise the third year option, and engage Malden and Jenkins once again to conduct our fiscal year audit at a cost of $19,900.
I'll move that the Finance Committee recommend the full commission approve to engage the accounting firm of Malden and Jenkins to perform the financial audit of the BGJWSC for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023, at a cost of $19,900.
I'll second the motion.
Discussion?
Let me ask from conceptually, when you have continued to have the same auditors, is there a point when you feel like you need to switch and find some other auditors?
Actually, our plan is later in 2023, after this audit is complete, or very beginning of 2024, we'll be issuing another RFP to see who all may be interested in providing those audit services for us. There's pros and cons to maintaining a consistent relationship with an auditing firm. One, they know us, they're familiar with our operations and our accounting, but at the same time, they can get complacent on issues such as that. So to, basically to do the RFP every 3 years kind of keeps us all on our toes.
And I would imagine there's a limited number of firms that would bid on something like that.
I believe so. How many, do you recall how many we had last time?
Oh, okay.
Last time we put it out, we had one
Very
person
limited
interested.
then, okay, yeah.
Makes for an easy decision.
Well, that's true, yeah. And I know that they've been doing a really nice job, and even though they're very complimentary to us, it's professional compliments they're giving us because of our efficiency.
And in fact, we've recently had an item come up with regards to an ARPA request application that we've recently submitted that's required some input from our auditors, and we were able to reach out to them.
Yeah.
And even though the lead auditor on our account, Trey, he's currently teaching in Atlanta, he's getting us the information we need by the end of the day. So.
Wonderful, all right, thank you.
On page 8, or the final page, there's a sentence that says, our fee for these services will be $19,900 plus $3,500 for each major program for single audit for the year ended June 30th, 2021. What is that second part reference there, the $3,500 for each major program? What are they referring to?
That's referring to federal audits for SRF funds. So with the GFA funding, those require single audits. It's a required thing with all federal funding.
Was that something we do every year? Or-
Not every year. We do have to do it while we're having the expenses on the GFO loans, which should be wrapped up within the next 12 to 18 months. So we'll have to do it again this year, but afterwards you don't have to do it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Have a motion second. All those in favor? Motion carries 3-0. And Mr. Owens, credit card limit approval. Credit card limits approval.
This should be a fairly simple item. As you know, we issued an RFP for banking services. Synovus was selected for that. One item within the banking and merchant services, of course, is the company credit card. We maintain a credit card for various items that we have to purchase, either emergency needs or small items here, there, travel expenses, etc. We have a couple of different credit cards, but they maintain one overarching limit. So that limit that we currently have and wish to ask for on the new credit cards that we will get from Synovus is $50,000. So at this time, the staff is asking the Finance Committee to recommend to the full commission to approve the application request to Synovus for organizational purchase cards with a combined limit of $50,000.
Seems awful low for an organization our size.
I don't disagree, but we have limited credit card purchases because we have a couple of corporate cards and then 2 or 3 individual cards. One thing we want to do when we get through this banking transition is to go to a purchase card instead of so many purchase orders and cutting checks, at which point we will have to substantially increase that limit.
But why not ask for the limit increase but I was thinking the same thing. Why not pay some of the bills that you can pay? Why not pay them via credit card and, collect points and use that for the employee recognition and the employee rewards programs and such that we do at the end of the year?
Because we are hoping to make this transition to the P-card system fairly quickly, I hope. Once we get, this is really kind of an interim thing since we will hopefully be cutting off our Truist relationship within just a few months. And then we'll investigate the P-card system that's available to us and the possible integration of that system in with our financial system enterprise from Harris, at which point it will.
So I think the bigger issue is we haven't done any analysis to determine what that limit needs to be on the purchase card overall. So we don't want to just throw a random number at you, which is why we're asking for the $50,000 today. We want to make sure we've done full analysis to get that limit correct.
So I'm sure that P cards are an area that requires very close monitoring and very close, very tight rules about. The city I used to live in South Florida is having a crisis right now because each one of the commissioners has their own P card. And there were various trips to places.
I'm going to recommend we don't do that here.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. It is a very, it's an area that requires a great deal of supervision and tight, very tight control.
Yeah, so when we issue P cards, what we'll have is different individuals that need cards will have separate limits based off of what they might have to purchase.
And there's a limited number.
Limited number of people that have them. And then
Right.
the person that makes the purchase has to keep up with the invoices, confirm everything they've got. Their manager has to review it, then it goes to finance to review, so
Right,
there's
yeah.
extra steps involved
Yeah,
with that.
no, I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
But for a lot of our vendors, it's something they like, because then they don't have to wait to get a check.
Yeah, they get paid
They
immediately.
get paid immediately. And
I
we're
guess-
actually working for some of our larger vendors to get them on ACH or
Yeah, I was gonna
EFT
say,
transfers.
if we do ACH, that's, that's one and the same though. I mean, because then, right,
Except
because.
we don't get points or benefits.
Right, exactly.
Oh,
So you get
yeah.
some sort of cash back or points type credit with a lot of the
Which
P-card
is,
programs.
on an organization our
It adds
size, I
up.
mean, if we tell them, you get the check in 30 days, or you can get paid now, but, you take that 1.5% fee or whatever.
Right.
And then that comes back to us, that's real money, and we can use that to fund some of these employee,
Right.
things that we've talked about doing, whether it be the end of the year gift cards and increasing them and,
Right.
or whatever, I mean, we, get the,
Absolutely.
but 100% agree with what Commissioner Cook's saying. I mean, we need very tight controls on credit cards. I don't think every superintendent ought to have a credit card in their pocket just in case they need something. I mean, we ought to,
Right now, I think there's 3 credit cards or 4. 3 named credit cards and then
And a
2
corporate one.
corporate credit cards.
Yeah.
And this is outside of the fleet for
Yeah, fleet,
fuel and
all
maintenance
that
and all
stuff.
that?
They have fleet cards that they go into the system, but they're not actually credit cards. They bill us, Fuel Lock bills us for the usage, and we cut them a check, but they're not actually credit cards. And of course, when they make a purchase, they have to put their mileage in, so.
PIN numbers and.
PIN numbers and all that stuff.
Right.
So if somebody, gets 100 gallons of gas every other day, kind of suspects some things at that point.
They have a
And-
tank.
And there's cameras.
All right, I'll move that the Finance Committee recommend the full commission approve the application request to Synovus for organizational purchase cards with a combined limit across all cards of 50,000.
I'll second the motion.
A motion and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you, Mr. Earl.
Thank you.
Discussion, Ms. Wilson.
All right.
Mr. Burrows is welcome to do this one too.
You're good to go. This is my second one. I've talked enough.
He's out of caffeine.
I'm out of caffeine.
Thank you all. We have before us the financial statements as of March the 31st, 2023. First up, we have our balance sheet. We have a cash and cash equivalents balance of a little over 2.1 as the end of March. That did drop in the first couple of weeks of April as we paid out some huge pay apps. And we have requested reimbursement from GFA and the bond to put that money back into our cash account. Prepaid expenses were $123,000. As the insurance is approved, hopefully tomorrow, that will also go into prepaids, and we will expense out 1/12 each month of that. So we will see that number significantly increase for April. SPOST account, we're down to a little shy of 250,000. As Mr. Burrows mentioned, as SPOST collections are taking place in April, that money is sent to the state, and in May, they do their sorting, send a check back out to the county. Then the county does their thing and divides it up, and we get it in the first couple of weeks of the following month. So our first check should be in the first half of June.
Are we like the stepchild? Is that?
Yes.
We find the money finally trickles down to us.
Yes, and the county will send
We're very thankful that we're able to
yes.
be a stepchild in that
with
relationship.
the check, they do send a allocation of how much was collected and what amount goes
Yeah.
to the different organizations. Fixed assets, you'll see that it's a little over $148 million, up from 125. That's an increase of 22.7 million. We have capitalized two big projects we will talk about later. And as you'll know, the construction in progress number has decreased by 14 million. Again, I'll explain that on the project report, but that's the capitalization of the projects.
The fixed assets, that gets adjusted every time we have a, oh my goodness, what's the word we used earlier?
Infrastructure dedication.
Yeah, infrastructure dedication, yeah.
Infrastructure dedications, if it's.
Project completions.
Yes.
I knew the project place, you mentioned that, but I mean, the infrastructure dedications, when it's a private infrastructure that gets moved to our books, and dedicated to us, are we adjusting our fixed assets?
Yes, as soon as we make it in use on the capital asset, the fixed asset register, it will increase our fixed asset. And if it's dedicated, it goes to a revenue account on our income statement.
I have a
Or the
question
revenue
on the
portion.
construction in progress.
Uh-huh.
The almost 23 million.
Mm-hmm.
Is that already with the purchase orders out on those, or are they
That is just expenses,
expenses?
yes.
Okay.
Expenses that have not completed on the projects yet.
Okay.
Even if it's multi-year, it just builds up
Right. Okay.
until we capitalize it, and then it will remove it from there into fixed
Okay.
asset.
All right.
Retainage payable, that is down to 226. As mentioned, we did capitalize a project, and that last pay app was 500,000, which was retainage. So that reduced that amount. Page 2. At the top, we have customer deposits payable at 2.7. We did list some research earlier. This started the refunding of deposits on customers' accounts who meet certain criteria, started in around February 2021. And it looks like we have refunded over 16,500 accounts for their deposits. We applied that back to their accounts, and that is done on a monthly basis.
On that level, where are we at with the discussion on when we collect deposit? Are we still collecting deposits for every new account?
Everybody in the
Yes, sir.
county, because we've done the ordinance, we've approved proposed ordinance revisions, and the county has not put it on their agenda yet. The city has approved that, so we have flexibility on city accounts. We are waiting on the county to approve that.
And I certainly understand why we'd want to do it at once versus doing it in one district, not the other. I can see
Right.
confusion there. But, I mean, have we talked to the county, see what the holdup is there?
Repeatedly.
And what's I mean, it just seems like it could be it seems like it would be, and maybe we can ask Wayne for some insight, but it seems like it'd be a consent agenda item that nobody would have issue with.
Every Tuesday at staff meeting, it's brought up, has anybody, and we ping them.
There's a process that we have to go through.
Yeah. Because the city when the city or the county do it, they present the reading of it. It has to wait 2 weeks for public notice for comment, and they do it. The city went through that process, the county just has not yet. That, the leak adjustment increase, all those things have not went through the county yet. Everything's been through the city.
And who's reaching out to them on our behalf?
Donna and Charlie.
You're reaching out to them, Charlie? To me, it's just such a huge benefit, and frankly, it's just costing us money to collect money. You know, I mean, you go to Georgia Power now, if you've had a previous Georgia Power account, or you got good credit, you're moving here from Alabama, and you've got good credit, you don't pay Georgia Power a deposit. And I just wonder if,
You do pay Okefenokee though.
sir, I couldn't hear you.
I said you do pay Okefenokee
yeah,
from
well.
personal experience.
Well, I mean, regardless, I just, wonder if somebody's got, meets certain criteria.
Yes,
they should
yes,
be
understanding.
Paying the deposit. The reality is, all it's doing is costing us money to keep it on our books, and all it's doing is costing us effort to keep it on our books and have to account for it.
We will increase the pestering of the county to get it on their agenda.
If y'all disagree,
No, we
think you're
all are
right.
very much in agreement with that.
Right.
sorry.
No, that's okay. All right, on to page 3. We have our summary revenue. Operating revenues, we are 1.4 million over budget. If you'll notice to the left-hand side, the sewer, water, debt, and administrative, the percentages based on the 5-year average, it is 5 years, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Is in the 74-75%.
I didn't think we had debt charges anymore.
This the REU fees.
So should we call it that?
That was what we should call it here, yes, sir.
Yes. The interest income, we've gained a little bit on that now, 364,000 over projected budget, again for a total of 1.4 over projected. At the bottom, capital tap fees on this revenue portion is at $1,563,025.
Which includes Buc-ee's. They have paid.
They did pay, that's right, they paid their, yeah.
On to page 4, this is the expense portion. On our operating expenses, we are a little under budget for the actual expenses, but some of our we have 1.2 million in purchase orders as of March the 31st. Some of those are blanket and contracts that will roll over into the next year. But that's included with our total of expenses and POs to the year to date, which brings us 880,000 over budget. Net operating,
What's the difference between the top of page 3 and the top of page 4?
they're the same.
Okay.
It's just the page 3 is revenue versus page 4 is more of the expense portion. The
It breaks
top
it down
portion
by the individual groups for the expenses.
But the
Yes.
top section is
Is
revenue.
the same.
Section's the exact same.
Okay,
because it's the revenues are recorded on both sheets.
gotcha.
Then on the middle part of page 3, it's broken out by governing body, personnel, operating, and capital, whereas the middle section of page 4 is by divisional. The net operating revenue on page 4, over on the revenues and over on the expenses brings us to 554,000. After you take out the debt and the principal transfers and the interest expense, we're over budget by 219,000. On to page 5, our group insurance cost. We do a quarterly summary for this. Our total group insurance as of the end of March, $1,277,584. There is a different line item there. We have the admin aggregate stop loss. We have the self-funded cost, which is our claims that we get an invoice on every Friday that we pay those claims. Then the third list line there is the deductible reimbursement. As of last year, that is to be included as part of the cost. So far, we have reimbursed deductibles totaling $32,250, and that brings our total to the 1.277. We are under budget by $1,166 as of the end of March.
How many employees do we have right now employed?
154.
We have 154 positions. We have 140 or 141 active employees.
But only 110 are covered here.
That's
Some
correct.
people choose not to.
Some people don't elect coverage. Some people elect coverage through their spouse at their employer.
Mhm. Okay.
And we try to update that each year as the numbers change.
Right, every year, when the insurance renews, everyone has an opportunity to
That's correct.
join also.
And when does it renew?
August. Well, we'll bring it to you in June, but the renewal is actually August.
So when are we gonna start having detailed conversations so we're not on the clock?
Talk to you in a minute.
Okay.
Okay. On to page 6, supplemental statement of cash balances. As mentioned earlier, the cash and cash equivalents is a little over 2.1, and that contains all of our cash accounts, checking, payroll, group insurance, petty cash. Our bond trustee reserve is 14.4. We have done one draw on that. It was 15.8. Draw number 2 was submitted last week, and we have gotten that second draw. On to page 7, our legally restricted reserves, which is our CIF, SPLOST, and customer deposits, $13,900. I'm sorry, $13,900,000. I like that number a little better. Our total cash with all of our cash accounts and investments, almost $78 million. On to page 8, this is our project report. At the top, we have highlighted Project 906, that is the Academy Creek Rehab Facility Project. We did capitalize the Ruby Collins portion of this contract. At the bottom, at the top of page 9, you will see that the total cost of that project was $10,709,554.87. So when we capitalized that portion, it took out the expenses that current year plus the remaining of it that was rolled over from last year. So that's why you see the expenditures on that portion has changed just a little from last month. And that made the difference in the fixed asset and the construction in progress numbers. You'll see on the bottom of page 8, we have a new project. And this is also part of the 906. It is the UV installation, and that's the ARPA grant funding. So when we tried to capitalize the Ruby Collins project, it wanted to take the $276,000 that was ARPA funded out of that expenditure for the year as the total cost, and we need that to be separate. So since we had created a new project here for ARPA grant tracking, since then we have found that there is another way we'll be able to keep that within that 906 project. In the future, we'd have just called it 906A for 906 ARPA funding, because you can have different funding sources for a project. But we do need to track that separate because we do want to submit reimbursement for that. With our project report, we have a little over $49 million of available funds. That includes amounts left on the contract plus any purchase orders outstanding as of the end of March. Any questions on the financial statements?
Back on page 7.
Okay.
So at the bottom of page 7, the cash equivalents, bond sinking, elective, overnight investments, et cetera. So cumulative, we have the 77 million, of which 10 million is, I'm sorry, of which everything except 10 million is invested some way or form.
Yes,
And of that 10 million, the cash equivalents, elective reserves, and the legally elective reserves, are they in the money market account that's getting 4.5%?
I'll
Are they?
defer
We
to,
will be moving basically the elective reserves and the legally restricted reserves, which total roughly $8 million by the end of this month. Those will be moved into the money
We're
market
setting up
account.
the new
that you're
accounts, what's
thinking
new
of.
is now.
Those accounts have been created. There's a few more minor details to be set up for them before we can actually use them. And that should happen within, I think, the next week or so.
And those are the ones we're getting the 4.5% for the first year.
And our cash money market account in our investments, I've spoke with Michael Martin, our investment advisor, Monday. That money market account is currently yielding 4.6%, which we have roughly $8 million of our investments are in that account at the moment.
And the rest of them are on that sheet that you showed us last month.
Exactly. And as those.
And as they're coming up for renewal, which we had some that were coming up into March.
Exactly, yes. In fact, in March, we had 615,000 that matured, and when they matured, that cash was moved into the money market fund as well, which, like I said, is now getting the 4.67 or 68.
That was guaranteed for a year, correct?
Well, it's a money market, so it will fluctuate, but based on the current environment.
Two
and
separate
also-
money market accounts. You got the money market with our banking services and investment services. He's talking about the investment services piece now.
The banking service one was
It's
guaranteed
guaranteed, yes.
for a year.
The investment services account, currently Synovus sees, based on futures trading activity, they're estimating an 86% chance that the Fed's gonna raise rates again in May. And long-term, they're thinking rates will continue to go up until late 2023, in which case, the money market is definitely the place for these funds to be, at which point in time we'll be looking at, when things cap, and eventually when the economy turns around, interest rates start to come back down, we'll be looking at investing into long-term securities that will actually appreciate, as far as their fair market value, as well as having a pretty good interest rate on the principal. So we've definitely got what I feel is a pretty strong plan in place for our investment funds.
So by month's end, everything except the 2 million cash equivalents is gonna be invested.
Right.
Either 4+ or what's already been locked in before and that we're stuck to.
Historically, I think we've kept about 3 to 3.5 million in our revenue account, and we've seen that that's a pretty solid amount to have there based on our regular monthly activity.
So how many days, but we can get out of the money market anytime we want, right?
Yeah,
So how many days cash on hand is the 2 million in overnight cash?
I think that's
15.
probably a little less than a month. From what I, and as Francis made a comment earlier, our balance had dipped down earlier this month, and that account that normally I think we hold around between 3 to 3.5 million, that got down to 360,000.
That retainage payment on plant.
Yeah, but I mean, we can project that.
Yeah.
I mean, we can project that and pull money out of money market. I just hate to keep, a very, very conservative amount in cash and have a month's worth of cash on hand sitting there doing nothing if it could be earning 4.5%. That's just my 2 cents. I mean,
Which for this year, as soon as that gets transferred to Synovus, it'll be pulling in the 4.25. So,
the overnight
sitting in the cash.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's the overnight.
Overnight cash
Yes.
will too.
Yes.
When we get transitioned over to
I was talking
Synovus.
about banking versus investment. The banking is the overnight cash.
Okay.
So it'll be on the 4.2.
So it's gonna take a couple of months for us to transition the banking services, merchant services, and the lockbox portion all over. So you'll see some with Truist, some with Synovus as we do the merge. Like the utility revenue will have to we'll have two open for a couple of months as we transition out of one into another.
Well, understanding it's gonna take some time, I certainly get that, but I mean, I'd argue we have the opportunity to get 4.5% on 10 million, I mean, the sooner the better.
Right.
Right. With accounts,
That's why I made mention that I'm planning to basically move 80% of that, or 8 million, before the end of this month.
so the accounts themselves have been set up. We're in the process of having training on how to operate the website, their online portal, so that we can actually access those funds. So
Yeah.
we're working on that
I will
part.
say, she brought up lockbox. I notified y'all via email, but just for public distribution, when we change lockboxes, the bills that will be sent out with the stub that you mail back will say you're mailing it to Charlotte instead of to Orlando. That is to a processing center that does all that scanning and accounting, and we don't have to open all those checks and do it internally. That is probably the most common question we get, is why do I mail my check to Orlando? So we will get that question of why I am mailing it to Charlotte, because it is substantially more cost-effective for us to do that than to have them all mailed here and opened. Sure is.
Sure, absolutely.
And Charlotte is apparently, according to our banking centers, quite the financial hub for these type of activities. So that is why you will be mailing to Charlotte.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you. And thank you for doing all the work to get our interest income up. Thank y'all.
That would be the.
Getting back to the agenda here, Ms. Burrows, anything?
All I have today, sir. I'd like to thank y'all for the input last month on the budget so we can get a good product together. And certainly supporting the capital projects plan. Those are two big milestones for us every year. Absolutely.
Commissioners, anything else for today?
Nothing from me.
Can we get a motion to close?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor? I will close.
Adjourn.
We'll remind